Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're going to look at verses 7 through 9 of Revelation chapter 20. And this week in our devotions, I want to show you how the prophets all sing in harmony. I want to show you how this same text that we've started last week and we preached this weekend for Easter, and that we're going to continue to parse through this week because it's so pivotal, how it harmonizes beautifully with the prophecies of Daniel and the prophecies of Ezekiel, and even more Jeremiah. It's really incredible. This is sort of the culmination of a year's worth of teaching to show how all the prophets spoil the ending for us, and they place in our hearts a light that the enemy can never extinguish. And by that light, by this hope that this text gives us, we can endure any trial, any difficulty, any persecution, any loss, any pain, disease. I mean, you name it. This is something that can never be put out. This is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is the carrot at the end of the stick. This is the motivation for any Christian to get through any battlefield. This is the ultimate denouement, the ultimate absolution, the perfect ending to the most amazing story, not only in all of time itself, but the story of time itself, the story of why time exists. It's all heading here. Its culmination is in these words. So here's Revelation 20, starting in verse 7. When the 1,000 years are completed, see our previous teachings on the millennial reign of Christ, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. They came up across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the encampment of the saints, the beloved city. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. And then as you can see on my screen here, the very next text is the great white throne judgment. But I want to zoom in on these three verses and talk more about them. I want to show you something from Daniel that kind of zooms out holistically and looks at prophecy itself, and it changes how you and I perceive, even the present wars on the globe. And it places all of them, and every war before us and any war that comes after, it places all of them in this perspective. Because even in these four verses, there's a massive war. And these wars take place, this war takes place after 1,000 years of Christ reigning on the earth. Gog and Magog are names that we've seen before because we've studied Ezekiel. So go back and watch, and then you will know if you haven't yet, because it places the Gog and Magog battle into perspective. In the millennial reign of Christ, you've got this beautiful city, and it's the beloved city, and it's where Christ himself reigns. And it has this near Edenic effect on the earth around him. But it's not yet the new heaven and the new earth. That comes in chapter 21. At this point, every one of us should be chronological. Like every devotion I'm sharing from this point on, every sermon text, every curriculum piece that you read, every one of us should agree we've arrived at the ending. Even like post-millennialists, like this is your text, right? Because it says when the 1,000 years are completed. Those are the first words of verse 7. So I shouldn't have to lay out the buffet of biblically orthodox views at this point. Post-millennialists, this is it. You don't think that anything yet has really happened. I don't know how you get around the return of Christ. Everybody kind of says like, well, that's Revelation. Revelation 19 is definitely the return of Christ. There's no doubting that. There's no denying that. It's incontrovertible. It's ungainsayable. It's patent in the text, and you're just arguing with God. If it's like the Bible says Jesus came back, and you're like, no, he didn't. So find another devotional channel. This is what God said. Everyone should get along at this point on. Everyone, like, I don't want to hear any debates. I don't want to hear, like, soteriologically, eschatologically, we all just got to agree at this point that the ending is the ending. And we all are chronologists now, because there's no other way to interpret this. This describes final judgment, the new heaven, the new earth, the dwelling of God with men forever. That's what's happening here. And this has all been revealed by God to his prophets. And no prophet ever gave teaching along his own interpretation, but he's just carried along by the Spirit, and he conveys to us what God tells him. Like we talked about in Revelation, John is journaling in real time what he sees, and he's telling us what's happening. And he's even told us a couple of times, I was told not to write this down. That's where the title of our series comes from, Seven Thunders. And at the very middle of the book of Revelation, you've got these seven thunders that speak out and they say something. And then John writes to us about the seven thunders themselves, but he's forbidden from relaying what their message was. This is the nature of revelational epistemology. God, the one who knows everything, has written a book. And we're reading that book. At the Revelation, at the Redemption Church, yeah, we basically are the Revelation Church for the last couple of months now, because this book is all eclipsing. At the end of days, in the ultimate ending, there's not a single loose end that's left untied, and we have that information now. So this is written to us, divinely inspired from the Holy Spirit to God. John journaled in real time. Daniel collected his prophecies, and by the inspiration of the Spirit, they're all here. There's this moment in Daniel, and if you weren't with us in our series through Daniel, please go back and watch that, where the Magi are all gathered, and it's like Nebuchadnezzar is trying to have this massive cull of all of his fathers, magistrate, and all of his advisors, and he's kind of taking over, and he's making Babylon his own now, and he's issued an edict that no one can possibly fulfill. That's why I suspect that it's Nebuchadnezzar's way of just cleaning house. But he's got this guy Daniel, and the hit has basically been issued on anyone who can interpret dreams. But it's not just interpret the dream; it's that you got to tell me the dream too. So, I mean, if Nebuchadnezzar's acting in good faith, he knows and he's honest when Daniel tells him the dream that he had. There's no one else who can serve as a witness to that. But Nebuchadnezzar is so blown away by the fact that Daniel not only knows his dream and is able to relay his dream back to him, but he also is able to interpret it, that it becomes confirmation. And then as a result, you see Nebuchadnezzar contribute chapter 4 of Daniel. That's right. Nebuchadnezzar, the same guy who laid siege to God's city, and the same guy who killed a lot of the people of God, is then a mouthpiece of God. And you get this hope that even Nebuchadnezzar gets saved in chapter 4. You see him give glory to the God of the universe. It's really amazing. But when this edict is issued and all the dream interpreters are freaking out, all the Magi are like, no one can do this. Daniel ends up saving their lives. They're the same guys that ended up having Daniel thrown in a lion's den and his 3 friends thrown into a fiery furnace. So they don't bother to thank Daniel. But here's what happens after that edict is issued. Daniel asks for time. Then Daniel went to his house and told his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about the matter, urging them to ask the God of the heavens for mercy concerning this mystery, so Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of Babylon's wise men. The mystery was then revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel praised the God of the heavens and declared, and here's what I want us to pray as a result of just nearing our completion of our study of Revelation. Because we haven't had the same vision as Daniel, but we've had revelation from God, have we not? May the name of God be praised forever and ever. That's a prayer that's answered in Revelation. For wisdom and power belong to him. Hence, this book exists. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. Man, we've seen that recently in world events. We've seen that in the book of Daniel. We see that happening in the book of Revelation. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Right? You got a big brain? Guess what? It's not for you. It's for the glory of God. And God is the one who gave you that wisdom. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. So this study has been cool, just pastorally to walk with people through it, because I'm blessed by how Revelation has blessed our people. That it was considered kind of like the black diamond slope of the Bible. And like your first time going down a black diamond slope, for a lot of you guys, it was probably like when you were a fetus. But for other people who moved here later in life, it's a big deal. And it's really amazing to find out that you can actually go down the black diamond slope and not die. And in fact, it's really amazing. He reveals deep and hidden things. I mean, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the final revelation of Jesus Christ. He's revealing the deep and hidden things. And look, this is interesting, because I was just having this talk with my kids on our little spring break trip we just took. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. It was my son Ace that was fascinated to learn that darkness doesn't really exist. It's just the absence of light. And so light itself is comprised of like particles and waves, and its speed is, as far as we know, like the highest speed there is in the universe. And so it's our metric for its metric is how we calculate distances across space. And everything else is just default darkness. But God knows what is in the darkness. And it says light dwells with him. So if light casts away darkness, and it's impossible for the two to blend, and if darkness merely is the absence of light, then we can see the omniscience of God on display in this single verse, Daniel 2:22. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. So he's obviously fully aware of everything in the light, but he also knows what's in the darkness. He knows what we do when no one's around, and he's responsible for our greatest moments. The wisdom that we have, he gave it to us. And if we have understanding, he's the one who gave us the knowledge that we have. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and discipline. Proverbs. I offer thanks and praise to you, God of my ancestors, because you have given me wisdom and power. Now, this is something specific to Daniel in his context, interpreting and even knowing the vision from Nebuchadnezzar, but it's something that anyone who's studying the book of Revelation can also pray. Give God thanks, give God praise. The God of your ancestors, you may not be of Jewish descent, but you are of descent of the covenant, right? Through Isaac, see Romans 9. I offer thanks and praise to you, God of my ancestors, because you've given me wisdom. Now, on this one, even today, this came up. He's given us power. Remember that Daniel's saying this prayer, thanking God for showing him Nebuchadnezzar's dream and its interpretation. But don't take this too far to think that you now have a little bit of power that is somewhat likened unto that of God. There's kind of a trend, and it has to do with us drawing imaginary lines and drawing circles around our family members, and somehow it's like borrowing from like witchcraft. I don't know. Christians are acting like witches and like drawing imaginary lines, pretending like they have this power, making decrees, talking to demons. When you read the book of Acts, you see that demons hear that nonsense and they're like, who are you? Like, these are rebellious spirits. The devil's not going to obey you. Even the archangel Michael doesn't do that. We've seen the subordinates to Michael, the angel, go wipe out entire armies single-handedly. And so one of those angels who just wipes out an entire army, he answers to an angel like Michael. And so Michael, the archangel, doesn't even dare rebuke the devil by his own authority and his own power. Rather, he asks the Lord to do it. He asks God to do it. So don't ascribe too much power to the angels. That's one thing. Actually, just last week we saw a church that was dedicated to Saint Michael the Archangel. And it was cool because I remember that church, they used to sell something called holy hot dogs. And I was like, man, I need a holy hot dog in my life. But you guys need to change the name of your church, because that word saint, we turned it into some sort of elitist thing within the Catholic Church. But the Bible describes everyone who believes in God as a saint. All of his true followers are saints. Sainthood is not some sort of elite status symbol that we make up our own criteria and evaluate one another along this rubric. Like, no, that's the saints. The fellowship of the saints is not a gathering of SEAL Team 6 Christians. It's what you shouldn't miss. It's what happens at every local church every Sunday morning, and it has since the first resurrection morning. That's why we gather on Sundays. So we don't have more power than the Archangel Michael. We don't have the power. Okay. God gave Daniel power in this text to know and interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream. But God definitely gives us wisdom from his word. And now you have let me know what we asked of you, for you have let us know the king's mystery. See, so like continuing in the verse, it contextualizes it further. But Daniel is thanking God because he has been shown something here. And he's been told something that no one else could know. All the Magi of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, whom he had inherited, the whole old guard, hoping to be grandfathered into their old positions, and instead they're kicked out or they're even killed because of their inability to answer an unsolvable riddle. Daniel solves it by the power of God. Daniel is shown the ending. The only good faith answer to the question scientifically, like how does the world end, is we don't know yet. All that could come out of such a question answered honestly would be speculation. Our sun is a G2 dwarf star in its main phase, and it has an expiration date, and that could be billions of years from now, but it's going to explode one day. Stuff like that. We don't know. It could be climate change. Could be, for a long time, that's been any number of things. But it's all speculation. The only answer that you could give in good faith is just, we don't know. But the creator of the universe wrote a book, and this is its ending. God has revealed this to us. He has given us wisdom. He's given us understanding. He's already told us how it's going to go. And included in this final warning of how it's going to go is the release of the devil after 1,000 years. When the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison. Note the strict chronology of this statement. And will go out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth. Okay, what are the four corners of the earth? It doesn't really matter. It means it's global. Gog and Magog, then, we see Gog. I've seen speculation around this, that it's similar to kind of like a Russian word, and I guess I can kind of see where that's coming from. But what I see in Gog and Magog is that like Gog is a dude, likely a singular individual, and he's commander over Magog, which I interpret to be a coalition of nations that all surround the Millennial Temple, all surround Jerusalem, topographically probably unrecognizable from what it is right now based on the events of the final bowl judgments. But Gog and Magog are this coalition of nations from the four corners of the earth now answering this call from after 1,000-year wait, and they've gathered for battle. So the forces of evil are still at work on the earth. God has not yet redeemed the earth, but for a millennium, for 1,000 years, God gives this undeniable ministry. Christ himself is right here on the earth. And despite 1,000 years of having the only perfect, if you can call him a political leader, it seems to diminish what he does. If after 1,000 years of having the perfect leader, they still gather for battle. They still gather for battle. Every single member of the army of Magog, everyone who follows the lead, Gog and Magog, gathering at the behest of Satan, even 1,000 years after the Antichrist and his the beast and his massive theocratic totalitarian dictatorship. It seems socialist, but they're still buying and selling, albeit with the mark of the beast. So I don't know if it's socialist or communist, but it's definitely totalitarian. It's definitely theocratic. 1,000 years after that massive coalition of nations has fallen, and that whole corrupt world system marked by idolatry, represented through the illustration of sexual immorality and the woman Babylon, whose smoke is rising. Even 1,000 years after that, there's still this coalition that would rise against Jesus. There's some people for whom no number of miracles will ever be enough. There will not be enough proof to satisfy those whose faith depends on proof. Because if your faith depends upon such proof, it's not actually faith. Their number is like the sand of the sea. These loyalists who are following the devil himself are like the sand of the sea. They're so numerous. And they come up across the breadth of the earth. All right, man, it's one of those things. It's tough because I'm a huge patriot. I love the United States. I love the fact that it's built upon a theological argument that our rights come from God, and so we're all born free. This stuff like this is why, like the Bible is why the Bible is forbidden in places like North Korea because it puts the person in the bottom of the gulag on the same level as Kim Jong-un. They both got to answer to God. They're both equal. And that is where freedom, frankly, comes from. And so freedom is a symptom of just the gospel having been present somewhere. Where the gospel is present, there's freedom. Where the gospel is not found, there's not freedom. And so this massive, massive coalition of people comes across the breadth of the earth. And that means that even my beloved United States is at least represented in this. And they come up across the breadth of the earth, and they surround the encampment of the saints, the beloved city. All right, I believe this is all surrounding where Jesus is found. And then in a single sentence, at the end of verse 9, it's over like that. So we've got 1,000 years of peace, but for 1,000 years, man, there's still there's still depravity. There's still the fallen nature of the earth, and there's the memory of the beast and his coalition. There's the memory of Babylon. Based on the events of the text, we know that people are aware of the power at work behind the beast. And 1,000 years later, I mean, that's insane. It's almost like quadruple the full history of the United States. Take the full history of the U.S., multiply it by 4, and that's roughly just how long it feels. The Christ is reigning from Jerusalem, and for generations, he's surrounded by this entire infrastructure that just gives him glory. And his presence affects creation in profound ways. But still, they line up like across the breadth of the earth, as numerous as the sand of the sea, because they want to make war on him. They see Jesus, they know who he is, and his effects of his presence are indubitable, but their response is not to confess him as Lord. Their response is not to repent from their sin. Do you see the hard-heartedness of every soldier in this army? Everyone who's consumed by this. They are consumed by a flaming lust, and it's by fire that they are consumed. Fire from heaven. Fire came down from heaven and consumed them. That's it. That's it. Okay, if you've been waiting for that time when it's like, if you're like my son Asher, if you ever asked the question, like, why doesn't God just destroy the devil? All right, why doesn't he just end it now? He's capable of just ending it. Okay, he's capable of just sending fire from heaven, boom, just take him out. God, why don't you do that? All right, why do you let them live? Why do you show them plagues? Why, they give them the chance to survive and repent, like you did the Egyptians even. I mean, you hardened Pharaoh's heart, but even then you were proving a point. And God, why do you let the devil survive this? Like when is enough going to be enough? And you can hear that question asked by those who come out of the great tribulation, and they're under the altar in heaven, and they're aware of what's happening on the earth contemporaneously with their own timelessness in the presence of God. And God's answer to them is that there's not yet been the sufficient number of martyrs. There's still more people faithful to him who are going to die. And they're given white robes, and they're told to wait a little bit longer. And this is what you've been waiting for. If you're like those tribulation saints, if you're like my son Asher, if you're like anyone who's ever asked, God, can you just kill him already? Can we just get this done and over with? According to the sovereign timing of God, there's still more suffering to endure. There's still more opportunity for repentance, which also brings with it the opportunity for us to exercise our free will and give in to temptation. And in all of this, we wait and we wait and we wait for this moment. Fire came down from heaven and consumed them. This massive coalition of nations, Gog and Magog, all doing the bidding of the devil himself. The The false prophet has been gone from their view for 1,000 years. The beast, he's been gone for 1,000 years. But death itself is still at work. Like depravity itself is still at work. The symptoms of the fall are still at work. And so this massive, massive army is just gone. Fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The devil who deceived them. Okay, so this is a massive coalition of nations who don't think that they're fighting the one good guy. The reason they make war against God, the Almighty, is they're deceived. The only way anyone would ever make war against the Almighty is because he is deceived. So the devil is the one who deceives them, and then he's thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and false prophet are, and they have been for 1,000 years. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So we know that the beast and the false prophet, it uses the word are. From John's perspective, recording in real time, that's where the beast and false prophet are. So he uses present tense there because in his vision, that's what he sees. And they haven't been destroyed. They haven't been annihilated. They've been in this lake of fire that burns with sulfur. That was the way the wording was in the previous text that named the casting down of the beast and the false prophet. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. That right there, the second sentence of Revelation 20 verse 9 and the whole of Revelation 20:10 describe that ultimate moment. And then the very next thing, which we're going to pick up on tomorrow and zoom in on a little bit greater detail tomorrow, kind of interface with some other Old Testament prophets, that's when judgment occurs. The devil has even been bound for 1,000 years, but he's released and he deceives the nations. The remnants of depravity take hold, and this one last hurrah. There are no seals to be broken. They've all been broken. There are no trumpets to be blown. The seventh trumpet has already sounded. There are no more bowls of wrath. The wrath of God is complete upon the earth. This fire from heaven comes with no proverbial representation. There's not some sort of metaphor to describe it. It's just described as fire that comes down from heaven to consume them. And then comes judgment. Then comes judgment. So there's no more tempting to be done. There's only judgment to take place. Here in verses 7 through 10 of Revelation 20, we've been shown something from God. Something that we couldn't know ourselves. Like Daniel received the knowledge of Nebuchadnezzar's dream and its interpretation, you and I have received from God how it ends. The ultimate denouement, the ultimate absolution, the ultimate defeat over evil, the perfect ending. And there's no prelude to it. There's no symbolism around it. It's just simple, instant fire from heaven defeat. In literature, there's this device called Deus ex machina. And it was used in like old school plays where, say, like, the protagonist and his friends are in deep trouble, but in this old school play, there might have been some sort of pulley rig with a rope attached to him, and that machine would like pick him up out of trouble and like fly him away. Kind of like the massive eagles at the end of Lord of the Rings come and take Frodo and Sam away. All right, that's kind of like an example of Deus ex machina in a literary form, but it's sort of a like practical term at its roots, in just in terms of dramatic production. You would literally use a machine that would act like the hand of God to save your protagonist from danger. That's how it all ends. But instead of a machine, it's just fire from heaven. It's just God ending it. He's always been able to do this, but he hasn't yet. He's always had this capability. It's not like God is revving up the engines, okay, and getting ready for this. He's able to do it now, but it's not yet time. It's not yet time. The end result is God's glory. All right. It's all been perfectly tailored. The whole story ends in the optimal, glorifying setting for God. It all ends with the ultimate glory of God. And after reigning for 1,000 years, you can see that the nations are still ready to receive deception from the devil. Depraved, primed, ready, hardened, right? The descendants several generations later. I mean, you could make the case that this is like 10 generations later or more, 12 generations later. I've heard various arguments, that 70 years is a generation, 100 years is a generation. And nowadays we subdivide generations down to like the decade at a time. So call it 100 generations, whatever you want to call it, like however many generations later, they're all still just like us. And they're deceived by the devil, and they take the bait and they fall into temptation. They pull an Adam, they pull an Eve, and they're deceived, right? Only they've got Jesus on the earth at that time. The ultimate ending is coming. The perfect wrap up is on its way. The ending is instantaneous. It's a demonstration of the omnipotence of God. It's been revealed to us in His Word. The deep and hidden things, the ultimate ending, it's all right here. This gives you wisdom. This gives you understanding. The prophecies work in harmony to show us this day is approaching. Nothing can erase this. You could burn all the Bibles in the world and we'd still know it. You could erase it from the internet and scrub it from every app on every phone, but you can't stop it. It's still true, and it's been known. It's been revealed. For a couple thousand years now, we've known how it goes. You may not be Daniel. You may not have been shown that particular kind of power to interpret the king's dream, but you have been given the ultimate light in your heart. This is how it's going to end. I'm excited about this. I've got a bone to pick with death. Death took my son. I can't wait for the ending of the devil. I'm very excited about the events of Revelation 20, verse 9. I'm really ecstatic about that. According to one of John's other letters, this is why Jesus came to the earth, to destroy the works of the devil. That's what he's going to do in Revelation 20, verse 9. And then in verse 11, judgment begins. So this is it. It's already been written. The same God in his first book said, and it was so, said, and it was so, said, and it was so, has said this. So it will be so. He makes good on every promise. He fulfills every prophecy, every single loose end, every side quest, all the stories, they all culminate, they all arrive, they all combine for this. And the very next verse describes judgment.